what do you wish you knew about the planning for something like this that you know today? Many of us are now learning at a breakneck pace. I mean, pandemics have such a unique nature. What you've been at this now for a couple of months, doing it at scale. As you said, you moved from business continuity now to thinking about what's the permanent new normal and strategy. What do you wish you knew at the beginning of this that's become evident?
You know, one thing, like, I guess in the beginning of this, we all thought it was gonna be another, like, if you remember SARS that happened.
Yes, right.
I mean, he ended up, although now there are reports that spread out much more than anyone knew, but it was quite contained in China, in Hong Kong, and that area. And I think in the beginning, there was still for a while a bit of a denial that this was going to be contained, and not enough accepting how connected the world was, and that was definitely going to spread out. So in the end, I actually think, looking back, our company, we've been able to react very, very fast. But I could have probably gained a couple weeks more if I had seen in the beginning that this is definitely going to be, and the best reaction probably is not even my company, but I'll tell you on the financial markets, like you were before. Frankly, like I was talking to my colleagues in China in January, and I knew this was going to happen, but I didn't act on it. I should have shorted S&P really much harder. I should have sold all my stock, and because for me it was so obvious that this was going to happen. But I guess I was still in denial that no, maybe it's not going to be that bad. And so that's maybe what I wish, like kind of taking the face of it much quicker and prepare more for it, produce more products, even more than we had, stocked up more. That's I guess what we would have done.
Well, actually, I think maybe yeah, interesting. I guess maybe I knew too much as well, because I was with Jim Kim of the World Bank, who's got so much experience with pandemics. I was there with Marshall Goldsmith and leaders. I had one of my typical CEO dinners, and Jim was telling us about how what we were hearing about in terms of this need to do an elbow bump instead of a handshake was just marginalizing or trivializing what was about to be a global pandemic. And I, in fact, did sell stocks at that time, which seemed like a smart idea, but actually you were smarter by not taking action at all, because the stock markets are back to where they were in March, and some stocks are much higher than they were even at the peak in January. So I would have been much better off.
I'm still negative. I'm still negative. But
okay.
But I guess like that's something. But again, reflect. It would have been, I would say, taken more seriously. But then on the business as well, I'm learning a lot about behavior of people, right? How people are behaving in this crisis. That's also interesting. But definitely on the business, like I would have reacted quicker. I mean, taking more seriously and reacted quicker. Although I do think we did react relatively quick, but it could have been better. It definitely could have been better.
Tell me about the dynamics of the people. So I've seen an arc usually in any crisis, and it's particularly acute now, or during this particular crisis, where everybody rallies with adrenaline to the cause. And there was efforts to make sure we could stay in touch with each other and with our customers. And then as the weeks go on in a crisis, it turns from, many people are making the metaphor of it going from a sprint to really more of an 800-meter dash, where now you've got to really suck it up. And what have you been observing with your team, and what have you been learning about what they need from you as a leader during that?
Yeah. I would say a couple things. One is the connectivity, even more often than before. The fact that before, naturally, like a lot of people, you bump in the office and you say hi, good morning, or you make a quick decision that is just like, should I go white or red? And you say red. Okay, boom, let's go. And now everything, you need to pick up the phone or make a video call or something. It's not that obvious. So you need this extra effort to connect. And what I'm finding is I mean, what I'm trying to do is actually, for example, since the beginning of the crisis, we made this list. We made this commitment, let's say, to make
Yes.
a list every week of calling 10 to 20 people that you don't talk on a day-to-day. Because obviously, my direct team, I talk to them on a daily or definitely during the week a few times. But there are many people that I talk to every once in a while, but I don't see it. So I just pick up the phone, call them, and say, "Hey, how are you doing? Everything okay? Do you need anything? Are you feeling okay? Your family is fine." It takes 3 minutes each. In the end, you take half an hour, 1 hour on the day. But that connectivity, like, and you can imagine how this reverberates more and more, right? The exponentially grows. If you do this 10 people, then they do it 10, it's 100, and it very quickly reaches everybody. So that's something that I guess is changing, you know, the connectivity more. Although it's more difficult than before, but we're trying to make an effort to make it more often than before. That's one thing. The second thing is it actually has been a positive surprise for me in a way that giving autonomy to people to make decisions, you know, I mean, and then like trusting that people will make the right call and letting them go, and that drives speed, right? Because I mean, I think in our company we're a bit fortunate in this case because we don't have a lot of like functions, like central functions that are just there to coordinate stuff. So, and the decisions are much quicker in that sense. Sometimes it haunts us, like it's negative for us with not having that, but in a moment of crisis, it has been good. And what I noticed more, it's kind of cliche, everybody knew that, but in this crisis it became more evident, is that when you go to people and you say, you let them, they make the decision. Look, I'm going to need this presentation. I'm going to need this decision made. Just go ahead and do it. Whatever you think is the right thing to do it, go ahead and do it. And people actually many times come up with something better than you thought. And again, this is not new for the crisis, but the crisis forced it to happen more often. And I've been very surprised with some positive things that came out. I'll give you an example. Tell me if I'm talking too much, okay? But I'll give you an example. Like we launched a direct-to-consumer product in the UK in 2 weeks, right? It's like from concept idea to put the website live to figure out the logistics in 2 weeks. I mean, normally this would have taken a few months because we would have analyzed and seen, okay, does it make sense? Is the proposition right? Are we charging the right price? But in the end, we're like, guys, we need to do this. The initial idea was more for what they call here in the UK, like the blue card workers, right? For the emergency workers, like people in the hospitals and drivers, like police officers that couldn't go to the shop, so they could buy the products, but then obviously open for everybody. But we were like, okay, we need to do this quick. Just go ahead and do it, and it did. You see what I mean? So I think that has been a positive surprise. You know, I wish you would have known before, even. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting how it's been taking what might have been a trend and turned it into a mega trend on the consumer side. And then with employees, it's taken a great management principle of delegation and empowerment and operationalized it because we need to just deal with it. And what a great gift that ends up being in hindsight. In many cases, I would imagine because of the nature of you being international executive, take us a little bit around the world in terms of the places that you've served and you've had to have impact, and how you've gone about what you just described, which is, you know, connecting with the culture, connecting with the people, and connecting to the market.
Interesting you asking me that. So we did something. We launched a new purpose for the company last week. And it's about like making life delicious and how you what's important for you in life to make your life, and made me reflect on these last months what makes my life. Will answer your question, because one of the two things that are critical for me is exactly what you described, is having lived in many countries, is dealing with people in the different cultures, smelling the streets of different country, the food, the costumes,
Yeah.
and how they do business, how they give a business card, how they conduct a meeting, what the yes means, what the no means, and I love that. It's part of like what I really enjoy. So yes, it has been like I've been fortunate to live in many different, pretty much almost all continents. I haven't lived in Africa yet, but I lived in all continents and in many places and traveled in many countries doing business. So yeah, it's something that you kind of learn, you know, what does like speed and decision making means, you know, like how some cultures just need a strong do this and go. Others will prefer to debate. Others will, no matter what you say, they will challenge you. And of course, there's people, individuals, but there are cultures aspects of that. So it has been interesting, like definitely to go to like, and then you have to start figuring out how each one behaves and what. But the autonomy to do stuff, it's kind of almost universal. I would say people enjoy that. Some people freak out as well when you tell them, hey, go ahead and do it. What you think is the right thing. People freak out, but I guess the fulfillment of having the ownership and the authority to do it, and the empowerment to do it, I think is really good. And the results have been really rewarding, and I'm getting very good returns from that.
When you think about the new cultures as you descend or parachute into this new place, usually there's a set of issues and problems that you're asked to address, and there's relationships that have to be continued or changed. What's been kind of a major pivot you've had to go through in one of these places in that regard?
You mean during the crisis now?
Or in any of your last engagements, when you think about what it is that you've had to take on and change quickly or really have impact on, and just curious to know how you might have gone about it.
I mean, the reality, I think like for having to do business, having done business in so many different geographies, countries, I mean, for me, the critical thing has always been to understand the dynamics of the country or the region. You know, that has been the most critical, because, I mean, for example, when I started doing business in China, you know, I lived in Hong Kong, right, for 4 years, and I was going to China a lot. And I mean, it's funny, the dynamic, but China usually, and there's always a risk of generalizing anything, but when you sign the contract is when you start negotiating, right? It's kind of, the dynamics a bit different, right? Normally, like I would have thought in the Western world that you have the agreement, discuss it, then sign a contract, and then that's it. That's a contract done. In China, we got to the contracts the first times I did some deals there very quickly. But then you sign, and then then negotiation starts. And you're like, wait a second, but I thought I had already signed it. No, but it's almost like from here on, now we negotiate. So, I mean, then you start understanding the dynamic of how it works in different countries, right? Or in Japan, not picking on the East specifically, because other regions have other dynamics, but in Japan, where like how, like sometimes it goes to many details, like that seems tiny details, but they want to go to every detail until they reach a certain common point and agreement, and the speed of decision is a lot smaller, right? Because Japanese, they think in thousands of years in general, like it's not and again, I learned how to respect a lot this cultural dynamics, you know. So I think that has been the journey, let's say, how not to impose how you were doing business in a certain way and has to be done in a different way. There are different ways to do it, and they all reach certain levels of success. You know, it's just a different dynamic. So learning this is a good journey, I would say.
When you arrive on location on in a new culture, how do you go about onboarding your boss and the people who are the stakeholders in this? Because you have to be, as you were describing earlier, you feel rewarded when you were able to empower the people on your team to do work, and you just had even a greater amount of that engagement when you're in a crisis where they have to actually step up and do things. That's certainly true for your responsibilities there as well, and you're far away from the headquarters office. How do you stay connected, and how do you to let people know what's happening and get the authority you need?
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean, even during this crisis, like I was saying, the communication has been so critical, right? And what I found is even it's kind of you have to define, understand what type of communication works for what type of person, and adapt in a way to this from the basics. So let me try to explain what I mean. Sometimes people like to use WhatsApp. Another one prefers an SMS. Another one's an email. Another person just a call. And then as you understand how the dynamic works with each person better, then you have to adapt to this. So that's kind of for me how has worked. You're talking like I'm based in London, right? My headquarter is in the headquarter of the company is in Chicago. So my boss and my peers sit in Chicago. But literally that's how it happens. Like with my boss, who is the CEO of the company, he likes to see things quickly on WhatsApp. And because I've tested a few times and I sent him an email, he doesn't engage that much. But then on WhatsApp, we have very good, very quick decision making, very quick conversation. So, but then I have other, like my general counsel, she is an SMS person. And so I have to like, and then I adapt, I kind of like, I'll say, you know what, this type of person likes more details. This other person likes more the general picture. But I guess that's part of the, let's say, the art of it, of communicating. You kind of figuring out what works, which is the same a bit of what I was describing before, the international geography thing. In a way, it might be just an office, but they are different people, right? So how you communicate to different people is different. Right? I mean, it sounds obvious what I'm saying, but it's you kind of understand what triggers each person and how you, and of course it's different than when you communicate into the masses, right? You communicate into 100 or 1,000 people at the same time. It's different as well, but on this keeping the boss or the office, I find like you kind of, first you try to contract, I try to agree first to say, okay, let's have a discussion. What do you prefer? How does it work better for you? That's usually the first, but that's the beginning, because then usually you can discard already some no's, but then as time evolves, you see what works. You see what I mean? And then I try
Absolutely.
to adapt. Yeah, I try to adapt on that. It becomes more effective.
The point you're making is a very profound one, where when you mention it, it might seem obvious, but it's not a practice for most people because it's difficult to do, and we have a real high expectation that somehow people can know what we intended, rather than to define what the impact is. And I've found a lot in my work with doing CEO coaching that there's a big difference between what people really intend to do and then what the actual income or incoming impact ends up being. And what you're saying is that you're seeking to understand what someone values and needs and how they communicate first before seeking to be understood, because you might be speaking in a wrong channel, or using the wrong language, or not being clear in a way that they need to hear it. Almost as if speaking a different language, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. It's exactly that. And now, like, I mean, with this online thing, it's even different, right? Because, I mean, I don't know how it's up for you now. You're giving classes all online and you don't see the people. I mean, I find it extremely difficult because for me, like, how do I usually give presentations, like overall present? I always like to read the audience, right? I kind of like talking and I
Yes.
how people are reacting and you kind of and you see if people understanding what you're saying or not. And now, like sometimes yesterday I was giving a presentation to 1,000 people on internal presentation on the company, but you have no idea what they really thinking, right? You see a little bit of a chat, but you don't know. And this that so then the feedback afterwards becomes really important because then you say, okay, then you need what I try to use. I have a few people that are like I really trust and know me a lot, and they can go out and try to get some feedback and say, okay, has the message been understood? In this case, I was giving a presentation to 1,000 people. I wanted to give a message or a few things. So, but I mean, it's a lot harder, right? Because you don't really know like, immediately if they understood or not. But then you need more. But in the end, yes, it's again, is seeking what they're looking for.
Mm-hmm. We found that people had the expectation that, you know, we ended up doing a national study for my last book back in 2012, where we were trying to figure out whether people felt kind of admired, valued, and respected for what they did. And it was an extension of the most admired companies and the most admired people. So with Gallup and Fortune magazine. And we discovered when we asked people, you know, do you feel like you're really valued and understood? What kind of rating would you give your boss, your peers, your customers, and your family? And it was not terrible, but not great either. It was like B's and C's in terms of how well they felt that they were understood or valued by the people who mattered to them. And then we just asked a follow-up question, which you would thought of would be obvious, but nobody actually had thought about it this way before. We said, so of the people who matter to you and who you just gave the evaluation on how well they get you and how well they understand you, how well do you think you understand what they value and what makes them feel admired and respected? And they gave it a much lower number. And so, no, I don't know what my boss wants. And my spouse, oh my goodness, and my kids. So I thought there was kind of a wonderful and tragic irony that we had this high expectations for wanting to be appreciated, but we haven't taken the time to find out what they define that as.
I agree. I agree. I've seen one study once that was about something like that you put some people just to sing a song, but not singing, just say, like you think of the song and the noises. And then you ask people, okay, did you understand what song the person was trying to do? And the reality, 9 or 10 out of 10 don't understand. But you think everybody's understanding because it's in your head. You're singing the song, making the noise. It seems so obvious, but nobody understands, you know. So that's kind of, this dynamic is interesting. What you think people understood versus what they really understand, you know.
Yes, and I think that's what you do at scale as an international executive is just profoundly that superpower to really understand how it's said.
I have to believe they are getting, but I'm not sure every time they do. But
yeah,
the best you can, right? But then try again, like you said, trying to the message, like you have to keep repeating and getting other people to talk and different forms of communication. Because I was saying, sometimes people understand the video call, other understand when they watch by themselves, other will need to read on an email or a memo or something. So like, but again, trying different forms of communication. I spend a lot of time thinking that how the message will be perceived, how will they get it, what I'm trying to say. And I'm fully aware that sometimes I think I gave a clear message, but it doesn't, right? And you have to be honest with yourself to say, okay, you know what? Maybe if it's 1-2 persons, maybe they didn't understand. But if it's 5, it's your problem. Like you didn't communicate it well, right? So then you need to do it again. You know, that's. Anyway, yeah.
You end up having to own it, you know, if it doesn't land.
Yeah.
When you think about the journey of the people on your team, you are a coach as a leader. It's the role of you to help people understand how to get better at what they do and reach their own leadership goals, but importantly, the goals and objectives of the organization and the team. If you were trying to unpack for an early manager, what were really the skills that you'd value most that they need to develop? What would be the kind of advice that you would give them to focus on? Certainly communication, as you've described it here, is a very, very powerful and essential framing of that. What would be some other key traits they should develop?
Look, Mark, I'll tell you one thing that I learned as you progress in your career and start naturally managing people and more people, right? You become less of a doer. You still have to do it, but less of a doer and more of a coach, right? As you progress more and more, right? As you get more. And I think this transition is not always obvious, right? Because, I mean, the reality is, I'll look at it for myself. When I was running a country, I pretty much, I mean, can sound arrogant to say I knew everything about the country. Of course I didn't, but I knew quite well my business, right? The business. And I had most of the answers of the business. But then when I start running like a small region, it's less likely that I'll have those answers. Like it's physically impossible. And in fact, you don't want to have as many answers anymore. You want people to have the answer. And you want to be able to ask the right questions. But then as you kind of detach yourself more or start a bigger role and more people, more businesses, more that, it's a transition that you kind of help to accept that you're not going to have the answers, to accept that you need to trust the people that will have the answer. You're just going to ask the question and coach them and show them the type of thing they need to know, but not show them the answer, but show them how they should go and find the answer. So I mean, but that's transition. It happens through time. I don't know. I would say I'm still going through that transition myself. I mean, but it's almost the acceptance of saying I don't know, you know, and then that and I wouldn't claim that it happens even overnight. Definitely not. But over a few months or years, it takes time. And I think, but if you accept that yourself, it becomes much easier to transmit to the others. And that you become much more a coach. So that's kind of, for me, has been something very important that I try to help a lot the teams that work with me, kind of coach the teams that work with me on thinking that way. It's okay if they don't know all the answers. Like if I'm talking about a zone president that works in my team that runs a big region, many countries, and it's okay he doesn't know the answers. You know, it's fine. Like someone in his team should know, but it's fine. But remove the anxiety a bit. If I'm asking a question he doesn't know, and say, okay, I don't know, but I'm coaching myself a team, and I'm gonna get to my team, and someone will get. So I think that level of confidence, even to say, okay, I don't. It happens the same with me. I go to the board of directors. They might ask a question, and I don't know. You know, that's the reality. I mean, I haven't looked at it. It's a great insight. Let me think about it. Let me go back to you. But that takes time. You know, that confidence to build on that you don't know, and you shouldn't know all the answers. You don't need to know. Otherwise, you're Superman, right? And it's very difficult. It's very frustrating because you're never gonna know everything, and you're never gonna be satisfied, right? You always be unhappy that you didn't know everything. So I don't know. I think that's one transition as you move on your career that you should always keep in mind, that it's okay, but help others to learn, and then be comfortable not knowing all the answers. You know? I try to think like as you move as a manager and manager of managers and manager of managers of managers, and like that become more and more important. You know, that's one transition.
It's a critical change. I have seen as executives start as at a level where they can be very directive and need to be very directive. And then as ambiguity and as size and as complexity increases, they have to be really more of a collaborator and coach to get things done. And one of the ironies that we've seen is that we are often very attracted to people who are super confident and can promote themselves. And yet sometimes once they get in their role, if they're the kind of person who's just very self-confident and very much about being able to promote themselves, that might not be the person you most want to work for, who might otherwise be wanting to promote the group and the team and the objectives. How do you balance between this kind of this sense of ambition and hubris, which you must have to move forward and to be confident, and yet the capacity to be listening and engaging others, and how do you balance those as a growing manager?
It's a good point, Mark. I haven't found like a perfect balance yet. I mean, it's a constant fight of it, because sometimes you do need to be decisive on things. And and what I found is it depends a lot. For example, for me, like when I came to Kraft Heinz, right? At that time was Heinz. I came on a situation in Australia first to run the Australian New Zealand business, which was very difficult because the business was doing very poorly. So the business wasn't doing well. I was shipped there, like arrived on a plane without knowing anything, anybody. Then I needed to be more decisive. I needed to be like, okay, that's how we're gonna do it. Let's go, let's move. Because I needed to be. Then once I took over other regions here in Europe, they were not in a bad shape. It just like made more. Then I didn't need to be as decisive. Like I could just help think. Okay, let's think through it. Let's build a strategy. Ask the questions. Let the people run the day-to-day. So I found that a lot of it's a balance of what the moment you are, the company are, the role you are, what you have to do. And what for me is working really well now, I'm trying to divide even my decisions in three. I tell people, like, I have three types of decision on. It's a yes, easy, go on. Yeah, people tell me, yeah, go ahead. It's a no. I say no, I don't agree, and which is they are most rare, but it happens, right? Sometimes I say, no way, there's no way you're gonna do this, or yeah, definitely. Or the most of it is like, okay, I would do that way, or I wouldn't do that way, but it's your decision. And it's kind of like I try to say, okay, this is what I would think about it positively. That's what I think about negatively. But you know what? Own it. Make the decision yourself. And what I find in the beginning when I tried to try the system, some people were like a bit shocked because they wanted either the reassurance or the help of someone making the decision for them. But once you empower them and they know it's a decision, and I have to police myself, because if it works or if it doesn't work, then it's not going back to I told you not to do it. No, it's okay. If I tell them they can make a decision, they can make the decision. It's fine. I will support it. I'm with you. Just tell me what you do. But that kind of, it was a journey for me. It has been a journey to let it go a bit. Before it wasn't like that. But
that's interesting.
But I guess you have to play depending on the role, depending on the. Like it's a bit of back what we were talking before. I spent a lot of time trying to understand each of the persons I work with, and the reality is individually in this case, because then there's some people that want a decisive boss, or some people want a coach, pure coach, caring coach. Others don't want to care so much. But how to understand people, I mean, for me, it's the most critical. Almost like on a selfish way, is to take the most out of them, like, or not on a selfish, like to make them run faster. So, the biggest learning. I mean, I'll tell you a little bit. It can be controversial, but I worked in banking many years, right? What I learned afterwards, the reality, investment banking, most of the people care more about money. I mean, it's nothing wrong with that, but the majority of the people have care about the money, how get paid. I mean, investment banking, the bonus in the end of the year is extremely relevant. People work really hard for the bonus in the end of the year. And I remember a training that we had, leadership training we had at Goldman Sachs in the past, that someone, a trainer asked, like, so how do you motivate your people? And everybody, like all us there, like, oh, we pay them. And they're like, no, but if you cannot pay them, and nobody had an answer because the motivation was to pay. When I came to Kraft Heinz, and then that's the part that I love about the company, is the diversity of people. It's not just about money. There's, I mean, make no mistake, I think 99 out of 100, if not 100, if I offer you more salary or more money, they will take it. Everybody likes it. There's nobody's going to say no. But that's not the motivation of people. You see what I mean? There are some people that want money. Other people want a title. The other one wants to be part of a big campaign. The other one wants to develop a product that they are proud of and they show their parents. They're all types. Or the other ones wants to manage people and to manage a group of people and coach them. There are all types of people. So to understand each one of them and what motivates them and what makes the most out of them, that is what I spend most time on, like trying to understand each one individually and how I can provide that to them if they deserve, how I can give, motivate the person that way. So that, for me, that's the biggest thing of a manager. You know, if you can understand your team individually and as a team, but individually, and how you motivate each one of them.
Well, I guess that's why you've been so successful. You've been able to connect and bring together people from so many different parts of the planet to be effective at home and across the globe. And that's why I wanted to really talk to you about this, because when we spoke on the phone earlier, I got quite excited about how you show up for the work. And when you're in my line of activities where I'm strategically kind of parachuting into the lives of all these leaders, you make a wonderfully rare presentation of how connected you are with thinking about being empathetic and understanding what people need, and then realizing that's going to be the connection that you make to communicate. So,
thank you very much for having me here. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye. Bye.